Hello and welcome to this week's Image Reviews. Every single week, Image Comics sends us their books early so that we can review them for you on time, day and date. So thank you to Image Comics for that. Of course, we are the Comics Pals. If you are not familiar with us, if this is your first time hanging out, make sure that you guys leave us a follow, a rating, or a review wherever you're listening. If that happens to be YouTube, hit that subscribe button for free, like the video, share it with your friends, and hit that notification bell so you are made aware of when we drop new content. If you want reviews for Marvel Comics or DC or anything like that, make sure to check out our review show for those books, which drops every Thursday. And listen to our main show, The Comics Pals, which drops every Monday. We're talking about all the characters you love and all the places that you can find them. We're doing news and some pretty cool interviews. This week, we actually had Sal from Comic Pop on the show. If you are into that show, the Comic Pop YouTube page, of course, listen to our interview. We think it was pretty cool. And today we're going to be talking about Spawn number 320 and Made in Korea number 3. So we're going to start with Spawn. This is by Todd McFarlane, of course, with Carlo Barberi on art. Tom Orzechowski did the letters, and J. David Ramos did the colors. I got to say, right out the gate, boy, does this book look good.
Yeah.
Really cool.
It even
super dynamic.
It even looks like an evolved form of the original stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
Like a natural progression, you know?
Yeah, I think that we probably underestimate how influential Todd McFarlane is on the modern artist, but also B, how much of an honor it must be to get to work on this character with Todd.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, Carlo brought their best work to this by far.
Yeah, A game.
Yeah, everyone did on the art front. Like, damn, that first page just of Cygor's face.
Yeah.
Whoa. Really cool.
Yo, my boy Cygor.
What about him?
He's fucking awesome. He's a huge fan. Are you kidding me? Been following him since Spawn. I've been following this Cygor since Spawn 75.
Wow. Look at who went on Wikipedia today. Cygor is awesome. Cygor is right up my alley as far as like a gorilla that can talk. Hello. This is all I want.
It's pure comics. Nothing more comics than that.
Yeah. So this issue is really just one long fight between Spawn and this new character, the Soul Eater. Who did you guys read 319 by chance?
Yes.
I did not.
Yeah, so this is a direct follow-up to that issue where basically Cygor was captured. They were trying to lure Spawn out because they want to kill him to take him out of the picture for the war between heaven and hell that's ramping up. And they're using Cygor as bait. So Spawn, of course, is aware of this, and he comes to where this is happening at. But what he didn't anticipate is this new player, Soul Eater, who has come to eat the soul of Spawn. But he forgot that Spawn does not have a soul. And so he was able to kick Soul Eater's ass without any hesitation whatsoever. This was quite a beating. Cool to see Spawn really like go in. And by the way, Soul Eater, like a human, not necessarily, I mean, he's a human. He just has like a ton of tech. So he's not like, totally unable to defend himself, but yeah, a human.
I thought that was interesting that they make reference to it, and I'm assuming it's like in reference to some larger stuff as well, because they're in the Soul Eaters in cahoots with like a large organization, whoever it is trying to kill Spawn. So I appreciated that they give you like hints in terms of there's more to this character in terms of the machinations behind him. And I thought that was interesting because I was like, oh, like I would want to go back to figure out what specifically prompted his need, because usually in a story like this you'll have to bring in the big guns and like why were the big guns necessary? And I thought that was interesting to sort of lay it out.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. I really enjoy where this is going. The story feels like it's ramping towards something, like you kind of said. And this feels like it matters. It doesn't feel like we're in the middle of, whatever random arc where at the end of it things
Hmm.
will reset. This feels like a big deal. And I'm into it. Like, I'm not gonna front. I don't think that Todd McFarlane is, like an amazing writer. I think that his style is very 90s.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff is outdated, and it feels like that. He constantly describes what's on the page.
Oh, boy, does he.
Yeah, but he's coming from a certain time.
Yeah.
And while that is certainly irritating and grating, I found a lot to like here. I don't know what's going on with me, but like, I like Spawn, and I always have for my entire life. I like Cygor. I love the fact that there's this Spawn universe thing happening now. That feels fun and fresh for this character, and I'm willing to accept the fact that the script is not the best.
Listen, we're in a Spawn renaissance. It's a Spawnaissance.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, just one thing. Soul Eater is actually Soul Crusher.
Soul Crusher. I'm sorry. Soul Eater is actually from God of
It's
War.
a,
There's
it's a
soul-
manga.
Oh, there you go. So I got my.
I
wires
bet
crossed
there's
there.
been a Soul Eater in Spawn. I would, you know what? I would put money on that.
To your point, Sean, the script was the one thing that I think made it difficult for me to get into it. I felt like
Mhm.
every time, like the panels didn't breathe, the pages didn't breathe, and I felt like every
Yeah.
time I was getting into like an action scene, I was slowed down a little bit by them. It felt like it could have been a much more uh, action-packed book if it wasn't for the captions pacing,
Mhm.
sort of the way that you could read each of the individual panels. I thought that was an interesting technique. I don't know if it was effective for the action, and maybe I'm used to like different style for that. So that was the one thing that made it a little difficult to like immediately dive into the action sequences.
Yeah.
And then, and this is just getting picky, but did you guys notice that at some point the lettering like included a very specific like
Yes.
style? Like at some point, I just pulled it up here, but the word spawn, the S becomes cursive, and then the G in the next panel becomes cursive, and you don't see that again, but it wasn't set up in the beginning. And
I think
I
I
was
did
like,
see that at some point. Yeah.
yeah, some of the text is enlarged at random places. That was just me being picky, but it threw me off for a second.
For me, that wasn't picky. That was like obstructive. Like, especially when you talk about the boxes. Like, I'm on a page right now where Spawn has that really cool spike bat,
Mm.
and like on that page, the words "far beyond" are just enormous,
Huge.
and I want to be able to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's
I
an
want
awesome,
to.
awesome page.
Yeah, it's super cool, visually amazing. I want to be able to appreciate that without a massive, like, if it was necessary, if he was like raging, but it's a narration box.
Right.
It's not even Spawn's thoughts.
Yeah, and that speaks to something I had some trouble following with the narration boxes. Is some of it was Spawn and some of it wasn't, and I had a
Mhm.
hard time. Like, I like the lettering. I thought it was, I agree it's obstructive, but it also sells it a little bit.
Sure.
So I didn't hate it, but I would have liked to have been able to follow it, in terms of who is doing the speaking, because especially the first up to 4 pages, right until you see Spawn, I was like, who's saying this? And then it seemed like it was Spawn, and then it wasn't. So,
Yeah.
one thing I'm very happy to see hasn't gone out of style for Todd McFarlane are the news pages.
Oh, is that a thing?
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
was gonna
yeah.
say, I'm like, this came out of nowhere.
Those I thought were actively bad.
I don't know where that's been in the past 300 issues, but when issue 300 came out, I tried to do a big Spawn retroactive read through, and I read like 3 volumes of the Spawn masterworks. And anyone who remembers that far back in our history will vividly recall listening to me short circuit trying to describe it all. But every issue had those.
Mm.
Interesting. Were they functional?
No.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, they are saying something. What context they have here, I guess it's that, the earth is being affected by this war between heaven and hell, and we're starting to see it build up. Like, I think it builds tension is what the mechanism is used for. Just like our news. But the way it just interrupts the fight
Mm-hmm.
was so jarring.
I didn't like those news pages at all.
There's only one is the thing.
Or the news. I meant the news, like the news panel. I didn't like that at all, and I felt like it was random and intrusive, and
Mhm.
I just wasn't into it. Like, it just came out of nowhere, and like I'm not even sure what I got out of them. Like, it
Yep.
was whatever. It's funny because Todd McFarlane talks about the way that he writes this book, and he said that if more real writers were to see the way that he like plots out the story for issues beyond just the one, they would like lose their minds, because
I bet.
he has like an idea of where the story is going, but each issue is kind of like fly by the seat of your pants in terms of how he's breaking them down. And that doesn't surprise me.
No.
Especially like when you read the last issue to this one, like he's in a totally different situation from how that issue started. The
Yep.
start of that issue was a little bit random. Like, it's all over the place, but it's fun, and I
Yep.
like it. Like, I'm into this right now.
And
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, to its strength, like each issue, even if it continues, feels like its own little Spawn story.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So this is cool. I would love to continue to review Spawn. So if you guys are into this and you watch and you leave us comments and stuff, we will definitely continue to review this book, because it's cool.
What?
It's fun.
I was into it. Like I absolutely, yeah. I think it was enough where like I'm like, oh, okay, he has a variation here, and I think that was interesting enough to want to keep going, because if this is like a jumping on point where you can just kind of be like, okay, cool, the next thing is going to deal with the aftermath of this, I think that's a clean start also.
Yeah. Like, I've been thinking about even going back and reading from 300 on, because I know that he fights the clown, and I love the clown. So I kind of want to see what happened there. So I might even go back and read from 300. We'll see. But yeah, this was cool. Let's talk about Made in Korea, number 3. This is by Jeremy Holt, with art by George Shaw and letters by Adam Wallet. This issue did not go the way that I thought it was going to go.
How so?
Yeah.
I thought that the kids were gonna like try to kill or harm in some way Jesse.
I see.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't get that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we talked about that last week, that or not last week, but last issue, that we were worried for her, that they would do harm to her.
I guess I was worried for this exact scenario.
Yeah.
In that they're gonna use her and harm her sort of being, in the way that, like, it seems like they're gonna or have robbed a bank, and they're gonna use her more than actively, like, physically harm her.
Indoctrination to some extent.
Yeah. Quickly it became apparent that they weren't looking to physically harm her. And I mean, the cover kind of gives that away to an extent. But
Yeah.
the way the second issue left me, I had a lot of questions about her safety. And
Still
go
do.
ahead. Oh yeah, totally. I guess I just meant in the immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this issue really took Jessie to a different place than I was expecting her to go, as far as like her even kind of rebelling against her parents. This was a heavy one. I felt like this was probably my favorite issue so far. Because it feels like Jessie became a teenager all of a sudden, even though clearly she hasn't. It's only been days. But it feels like she became a teenager and she's rebelling against her parents. And she's like, there's this whole world out here of people who feel differently, of people who, might even like me as a person. And unfortunately, it's so sad to watch. She's too, I guess, naive about the world and the way that people are to realize that she's being used and played.
Yeah. I think my biggest complaint is also my biggest praise.
Okay.
Is I want more, especially from this issue. As I went through it, I was like, come on, give it to me. Yes. And I got to the end and it was like, that's it. It's done. And it's like, that's a good thing. It certainly, gets me to the next one, but it's also, for me, it's just a little bit like, I want one extra step, I think.
What do you mean?
This issue in particular, I don't feel like what happened was quite a clear enough step forward.
For her or for the story?
For the story. For what I want out of this issue, I guess.
What do you want out of it?
More.
You gotta be more clear than that.
I mean, that's it. Maybe it's more, more of the actual act of them robbing the bank. Maybe it's, maybe I'm not quite seeing, the, maybe it's not being paced out the way, and I don't mean this in like a shitty way, but like it's not being paced out the way I think it should be, or the way like I would necessarily do it. And just like it doesn't like, I feel I want a little more. It needs maybe just a little more salt, that kind of thing.
I think had we seen the bank rob scene, I think that would have been interesting. But I think for for this, I think it worked functionally. I thought in particular the part where she hurts her arm makes a lot of sense to sort of solidify in the two boys that that she needs to be incorporated even further into this. And I like the dynamic, especially when like they bring out these like power gloves and she's like break this like concrete and stuff. I thought the build up to what was eventually going to happen was enough where the bank rob scene and the bombs made sense. So, but I think to your point, having shown those might have been a bit more might have gone better for some of the drama of the story.
So I have a couple of things to say, because you do bring up an interesting point, Kale, but I think that part of it is due to Jeremy's awareness that they don't have all day to tell this story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that if Jeremy knew that they had, say, like, let's just say, for example, you've got 12 issues to tell this story. I think at that point, we probably do see the bank robbery take place.
Yeah,
and I don't know that the book is better for not seeing it, but I don't know that I feel it's worse either. I think that
absolutely.
I think that Jeremy is very focused on what is happening to Jesse and how Jesse's family, how her parents are dealing with it, and making that more important than, you know, the action part of it. And I get that.
Yeah.
I definitely get that, and I don't think that that's a bad approach by any measure. But I would like to see how does Jesse feel about being in the position of robbing a bank? Like, is Jesse cool with that? Does Jesse have questions about that? How does she feel about, you know, taking an action like that that she probably has to know is not okay, right? Like, Jesse's pretty smart. She's well read. So she's not stupid in that sense. She could be naive and not dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am interested in that. But again, I'm cool with not seeing the bank robbery because we do get the focus on, you know, more like how her creator feels about what she just did. We get the juxtaposition with the phone call that now the parents know that she hasn't been going to school. Like, this is falling apart.
Yeah, and let me be clear. That was just an example. I don't know quite what it is I would like to see, but you know, like I said, just like a little extra something in the soup that I feel like isn't quite there for me.
Ooh, Kel, you're a robot.
Fuck.
I heard fucking then like a second later.
Yeah. The point you were making is that the book needs a little more something. I will
For
say
me, yeah.
this. I can definitely see the argument that the book is pretty condensed. It doesn't breathe. That's fine. I think that's a fair critique. But I also feel, you know, not to speak for Jeremy, but again, I feel like if page counts and issue numbers were not a problem, I think that we see all of that. So
yeah,
fair criticism. I definitely hear you out on that one. I'm not, clearly this is my favorite issue yet, so I'm not bothered by it.
No.
But I get it for sure.
I think to what you said, Sean, about like being able to dig into how Jesse feels about it. I think that the issue would have benefited from that, but I do think that what we got was just a continuation of her being naive but trusting of the people that she thinks are her friends, and she's still in this sort of nascent period where, as much as, you know, I should be following what I think is right, is what I think right is what I think is actually correct supersede what people and what I consider my friends to tell me to be right. And at this point, I don't think she's there quite yet. Right. So I saw, you know, her being complicit and maybe not feeling something as of right now. Like, I'm sure next issue we'll get sort of the reckoning of that from her parents, from whoever, police maybe. I think it works because we see that and we feel the frustration of her not being able to like make sense of, oh, this is a bad thing because it's objectively bad, versus, well, my friends are saying we should do this because we're different and whatever, and I trust them and believe in them, and that is not a conflict yet. And I think I like that is something that Jeremy continues to set up, is that this will be the conflict, is herself versus her friends versus her family, and all of that coming out, and I'd probably explosively. And next issue we might get like a literal explosion as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really what I'm here for, is the, you know, those dynamics more than anything. And I think what we get served here is all strong in terms of furthering that story, right? Like, Jesse's got questions her parents won't answer, you know, and that's a place that I think probably all of us have been to, especially as teenagers, where we start to, you know, come more into ourselves, and we're like, well, wait, why is this like this? Why do you do things I can't do? Blah, blah, blah. And I appreciate Jeremy incorporating that into this story. We're probably not going to see Jessie grow into adulthood or anything like that because she's, obviously a robot and stuff. This is Jeremy taking us through the growing pains that this character will go through on the road to hopefully a very long and happy life. Although the way this story is going, I'm not so sure about that. I did want to touch on the side angle of Jessie's creator, persisting and trying to, take her back. I don't really know about this part. Like, it hasn't really. I'm not invested in it. I don't know why I'm supposed to care quite yet about this character's journey and their mission to bring Jessie back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels ancillary to Jessie's journey. And at this point, like, it should be the more interesting part because it's got to do with the corporate espionage and the, the hacking and all that. But it's not quite on that level yet. And that's not to say that it won't be, but right now it's not as interesting as it was in the first issue.
Yeah.
Even last issue.
I also think it's very quick. Like, he just like comes in, they have a conversation and then dips out. I feel like on the total page count where this character is maybe like 5, and of those 5 they're talking in 3 or 4 pages. I don't know what the payoff is yet, but maybe that paid real estate could have been used to better effect if we're not getting what I think, but I don't even know what we're supposed to get out of it quite yet.
Right.
So I think that's one place where we could, that's one place where I feel like we could see more, to your point, Gail. Like, that's a spot where there needs to be a bit more elaboration.
Yeah, and especially, considering Kale's critique that the book feels like it's lacking a little something, a little spice. That's a place where, like, if interactions weren't there, maybe you could get a little bit more. So
Right.
Those 2 like jerks that she's hanging around with, though, remind me a lot of Harrison Klebold from Columbine.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, the 2 kids that did that. God, like, I really hope that Jessie doesn't fully go through with this school bombing. That's awful. Especially because I get the impression, and the book hasn't explicitly stated this, I guess, but there's certainly been heavily hinted at that people can't have kids now, or at least that there's an issue with that. Yeah. So a school bombing where like a ton of kids die is so much worse in a world like that.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But and not just the bombing, by the way, a shooting. They've got all types of ammunition. Yeah. These kids are ready. But they look like the Trenchcoat Mafia, 100%.
Yep.
They totally look like that. Let's talk about the proxy story in this one. It's called Distance by Yoonju Han. I hope I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. They wrote and illustrated it. What'd you guys make of this one?
A lot clearer than the last one.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. We had a fun interaction on Twitter with that one. You want to speak on that, Kill?
Let's see if I remember correctly. I was close in my estimation as to what was going on, but I didn't quite have the full picture. And the creator of that, whose name I don't have. Do you guys?
I'm playing it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also.
They were really cool about it, and they said something to the effect of, "That's the best part of doing this, is keeping people guessing and trying to figure it out and working out the puzzle." So I guess he was pretty impressed with our deductive reasoning, or mine specifically.
Yeah, that was Ben Cohen, by the way.
Rat.
Yeah.
At Ben Comics.
I enjoyed this backup story. It was the art was very nice, clean, nice to look at. I enjoyed that.
Mm.
And at least what I got out of the story, I really appreciated, which is the idea that these these proxies, they don't have lineage. And so that's a blessing and a curse. You know, when you don't have um a family history, you don't have uh you don't have anything to root yourself in. You can't say, well, my father was such and such and I want to be like that, or my grandfather was this great man for this reason and I'm inspired by that. You don't have that, but you also don't have the baggage that comes with having, let's say a grandfather who was abusive to your dad, which he passes down onto you, and that gives you a head case, so now you're whatever you are. And those things aren't present for you. So that's kind of an interesting perspective on the proxies that I hadn't considered. I've never considered it about robots. So I thought that was really cool. Is that what you guys got out of this as well?
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
much so.
I think I took it more in line with the main story, with Jesse's story. And in the fact of, like, at some point, the creator will probably try to take her, and no matter what he put in her, she's still her own person, and it doesn't matter what he thinks or does or wanted to do. Now she is Jesse.
Okay, that makes sense too. I definitely see how that ties in.
Yeah, for me, it pretty much hit home to what you said, Sean. And I think, in particular, like when you have parents whose families differ in drastic ways, like on my dad's side, right, we're a very tight knit unit. We have on my grandparents' end, they have family where they associate with, and then family that we don't associate with. And so when it comes to lineage, it's within the framework of the people that we know back in Ecuador, and the people that we interact with and engage with, and that's a piece of history. And for, like, assuming that this proxy is as nascent as Jesse, or let's say they're even like a little bit older, let's say, it's hard to contextualize what that means, because if you're not shown a certain portion because you've been told that it's bad, well, then you're going to take it as sort of as two opposing opinions of, you can only either accept the fact that you have this heritage or that you don't, and you have to figure out, and for me, it took me a while to be able to say that I'll associate with X number of people, or with whoever I feel like I will choose to allow myself to engage with, where this proxy was faced with that dichotomy of, do you have ancestors or do you not? So it definitely hit home, especially the last piece where the dolls get dropped, and representative of the grandfather and the grandmother, like, they were left outside, where presumably this proxy has left them outside of the framework that they're going to build for their life, and they decided to go back in alone and work through and make that ancestry starting at that point.
Yeah, I love it. I thought that was a good story, and I definitely like how Kale tied that into the larger story at play in Made in Korea. This was another hit for me. This was my book of the week for sure.
Yeah.
I'm loving this story.
I'm loving
Jeremy
it.
Holt. Jeremy Holt is doing a great job. George Shaw also. We didn't really touch on the art too much. I think this book it's simple visually. It's visually very simple, but it's consistently good. Like what is being done, what George is doing is great looking. It fits the tone that Jeremy has set. And it, and there are moments that are cool, and like the in particular Jesse pulling out that piece of shrapnel from her arm, and we see the machine parts underneath. Like, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that made me feel all kinds of things. Like, on one hand, it's like kind of creepy. On the other hand, it's like, damn, I feel bad for Jessie because she's probably never seen herself that way before. And that's got to be weird. You think you're a girl, but you're a robot. And how do you deal with that? And obviously she knows that she's a proxy, but like, there's one thing to be told it, and then another thing to be confronted with it like that.
Yeah.
And I think George really hammered that home with that close up. So yeah. On
the art end, I really like the design that just the design work that gets introduced. Something that caught my attention on page 19, the stairs, the staircase, and particularly the staircase handles. They're all in line, super clean. They like, there's just this design focus that he comes at it with the handles coming down in part when you come up from the second floor, then they become a single piece to go in line with the floor that you're on. Then they continue down onto the floor underneath. I was just like, oh, that's really cool. That's really clean. And then on page 21, the holographic sort of light that gets projected for the time where it says 11:45, it gets cut off by the backboard of the bed. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot of attention to detail, because there's also a very thin shadow where you would be seeing from that additional light. There's just a lot of attention in the book that I thought was really impressive.
And it's those things that, like, you can look past all that and the book is still like good and clean and solid from a visual perspective. But if you're paying attention, it's that much better.
Yeah.
And, George doesn't have to be flashy to make his mark, or make their mark, I'm not sure, on this title from a visual perspective. So
yeah,
definitely hats off to George. I'm really into this. I can't wait to see where this goes. I'm very worried for Jessie in this next issue. So I'm definitely into it. Are you guys into it though? Write in and let us know your thoughts about both of these books, or if there's anything that we're not reviewing from Image that you think we should be. We're very open to reading whatever Image sends our way and whatever you guys want us to check out. So before you dip, hit that follow button, subscribe to us for free on YouTube, like the video, share it with your friends, hit the notification bell so that you can be made aware of when we drop new content. All of that stuff is free to do, and it helps us out a lot more than it costs you. And make sure that you tune into our main show, The Comics Pals, which drops every single Monday. We're talking about the news of the industry. We're doing interviews and gushing about the characters that we love. So, by the way, if you leave comments in any of our videos, make sure to listen to the main show, because that's where we respond to the comments. So if you've left a comment and you're wondering what we thought about it, listen to the main show, and you will hear our responses.
And we have timestamps on it, so like you can just click right in if you really just want to like figure out what we had to respond.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you want to hit straight into, like, it's one of the first things we do every week, but if you want to hit straight into the comments, listen up. Almost assuredly, our response to your comment will be there. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, take care, guys.
See you next week.